This conference will now be recorded.
Go ahead, please. Go ahead. While adding data inside container, is there a size limit? No, there is no size limit. There is a 4 MB size out there, but if there is also an option called large blob, you can increase the size limit out here. There is no particular size limit as. Okay. No, it will take, but it will not take directly from the portal. From the portal, if you try to upload it, it won't take it directly from the portal because it needs a lot of bandwidth. We'll also look at what are the other options that you have to upload the files inside a container. I'll show you. We'll talk about that too. Is anyone else? Any questions?
Yeah, hi Kiran. Yesterday I tried for a container SAS token I generated for container.
Okay.
Okay, but with that container, sorry, SAS code URL, I'm not able to access that entire container with that URL.
Mhm. Good that you tried. So the question here is that we generated something called as an SAS yesterday, and we generated the
Yes.
SAS
Mm.
for a blob only. Like we generated a shared access signature for just one blob, but
Yes.
there's also an option to generate an SAS for the entire container. Now, if you generate an SAS for the entire container, you cannot access it over the internet. Like the way we did yesterday, you cannot access it over the internet. You will
Okay.
need a software to access it. You will need a small software to access it, which we'll be looking at today. That will be the main concept today that we'll be going into today.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Hey, hi Kiran. This is Santosh here.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, on Baby Fresh today you have given the how to create LRS and can we change to GRS, right?
Correct. Correct.
Yeah, I had done that activity from I have searched the research bar from the YouTube or and Google. What I done is I created the LRS. After that, I created the GRS, two storage accounts
Mhm.
and two resource groups.
Okay.
What I done means I go to the object obligation in Azure portal.
Okay. Okay.
In object obligation, there is a we call as we can create a what is it, there's one axis is called as one second. I'll object replication. In the object replication, I created create replication rules.
Okay.
In the create replication rules, I have given the destination storage account and I given
Hmm.
the source of container, which
Okay.
source of container it was data representative taking. After that, I created,
Okay.
uh, and after that, I done the backup. What are the I have uploaded the files
Okay.
in particular in LRS, and I go
Hmm.
check the GRS. The same it
Okay.
was take 3 minutes. It was data was backup.
Okay.
This is the way I have done it
Mhm.
regarding this the activities to do the research for in Google. Can you it is correct or not? And
Yes. To take a backup, it is correct. To take a backup, it is
yeah,
correct.
yeah,
Yeah. To take a backup,
yeah.
it's a correct operation to do. We'll discuss about that concept again.
That is correct. The entire thing, what is the things have happened
Yeah,
from
it
my
is.
side.
It is correct. Yeah, it is correct.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so just to recap, couple of things out here. This is what we've been doing yesterday. We created a storage account. Guys, can you please go on mute? Guys online, can you please go on mute? Guys, please be on mute if you do not have a question. It will disturb the class if you don't. All right, so this is what we did yesterday. Just to give you a quick recap, we have my voice is not able to. Are you able to hear now? Is it okay now? Great. So, yeah, please take a seat. We are now telling that the storage account is a resource in the Azure portal, which will help you hold something called as an unstructured data in nature. There's something called unstructured data. Is the voice coming there? Is it okay? So the storage account is used to store something called as an unstructured data out here yesterday. And after we created a storage account, we said that you cannot hold the data directly inside the storage account. You cannot store it. You will need something known as a container. So again, this is the representation of a container. And I'm now saying that you can create multiple containers inside one particular storage account. And each and every container can hold multiple blobs. Blob is a binary large object. Any file, any unstructured file is called as a blob out here. And when I put a blob here, this blob will either be sitting in a private or blob access level, meaning now I'm talking about the access level of a container. And the container can either be in private, which is no anonymous access. Then there is something called blob level access. Then there is something called as a container level access out here. Then there is something called as container level access out here. So let's first create a storage account. Today I deleted the storage account yesterday. So we'll create one. We'll add a container. We'll do the same thing what we did yesterday. And let's talk about a little bit more on the access levels. And then we'll go into the SAS once again. So just to recap things around. So let's do that. So let's go ahead and create this out. Again, it'll take me a minute to create this particular storage account. Let's scroll down and I'll say I create a new resource group called storage RG. And here I need to give a name. I'll just give a name called dev store Uber or Ola, something like that, the name of the project and etc. 000 USEs2, so that the name is unique. It's not taken by anyone. So that I can create a storage account out here. Again, I can take a location like ECS2. I'll say standard. I'll say LRS, low cost options to begin with. Advanced, I'll say the access tier is hot. Networking, everything I did not touch. I did not even, let's say, change all these options. I'll say review and create this out. And it's running the validation to see whether all the inputs that I passed is right. And once it's right, it says validation is passed. And I'll say create this out. I am now saying please create this out here. Again, it will take a minute or two to get this created. And this is what we are going to do after creating this out. I will also go ahead and create a container inside it and upload some sample data into it, like upload some files, upload some images into it, and then we'll try accessing those images out here, and we'll understand each and every case scenario on what is happening when you access an image into a container or from a container which is sitting on a private access level versus something like a container access level versus something like a blob access level, and etc. And let's take a couple of questions that a couple of people are having, that if I generate a SAS token on a container, what will happen? If I generate a SAS token on a blob, what will happen, and etc. So on and so forth. So once the storage account is created, which it is, let's give it a second for this one to, let's say, getting this one to get provision. And once it's provisioned, let's go inside the storage account and let's go inside something called as containers. And let's start telling there is a container called test container. Let's start saying it's a test container with an access level called private. So access level can be set only at a container. You cannot set the access level at a blob. All the blobs that are sitting inside this particular container will take the same access level called, or same public access level called private out here. And I'll say create. So I have a test container one. If I go inside this one, I can now start uploading, let's say, the blobs inside it. So I'll say upload. Let's select the same blobs that we were looking yesterday. So let's take all these things out and I'll say upload this out. And as and when I upload it, all the blobs that I upload will be sitting in an access level called private, in an access tier called hot. There are two terminologies that I'm using. Access level is how can someone access. Access tier, whether it's hot or whether it's cool. And the reason everything is in hot right now is because the storage account was created with an access, let's say, tier called as hot. I'm now telling it is a frequently accessed data. And in order to access this particular blob, if I click on this one, there is something called as a URL of a blob today. I can copy this URL, go to a browser, paste this URL here, and if I try accessing it, it's telling that the requested content does not exist. The reason being, my container is in a private access level, and if you are in a private access level, you cannot directly take the URL, paste it in the browser, and then access it. No anonymous access. When I say anonymous, no one whom you don't know cannot access this particular data out here. It's called anonymous out here. But if I want to access the data, that's when I do something called as what? A SAS token. This is called a SAS token or a SAS URL, shared access signature. So if I go for a SAS, there are a couple of things out here. Let's see this. It's saying account key. Okay, I'm good with that. It's saying key one. And very importantly, let's understand this. There is something called as a permissions that you can assign to a SAS token, meaning a user with this particular key, what can they do with your blob? Can they read it? Can they add something into your container? Can they create something? Can they write something? Can they delete the blob and etc.? I'm now saying I just want a user with this particular link to just read the data. I don't want them to add, I don't want them to create and etc. And there's also an expiration time that I can set. I can say from when till when this particular key is actually valid. And here if you see, it's saying this is 8:15 a.m. to let's say 4:15 let's say p.m. out here. You can also change the time to let's say a different year also. You can also do that. This is also valid. You can also set a timeline. There is no limit till what you can set it out here. And I'll say generate the SAS token and the URL. So this is the token, meaning this is the key which is getting added to the URL out here. Now if I copy this out and if I go to my browser, if I say enter, now able to see the image because I have added that entire key to my URL, and I am now not sending an anonymous request. I'm not anyone, I am someone with a key. Anyone can be this one. This request is an anonymous request. No matter how many times you try with this will give you this error only because the blobs or because the entire container that you have created is sitting in a private access level. Now, if you want everyone to just go ahead and let's say use a simple URL and want to access your data, you can change the access level either to container or blob if you want to make this data publicly available. So if I change this, it will again take a minute to apply it out. And if I come to this URL, without having a key or without having a token, I can access my data. I can access all the data out here. So till this is what we discussed yesterday. This is what we were doing yesterday on SAS and all these things out here. Yes, any questions till here? Any questions that I can take till here? Till here in this part.
Yeah, hi, Kiran. Yes, SAS URL and access key both are same or different.
SAS URL and access key slightly different. We'll talk about that on where the access key comes into picture. What is the difference between a SAS and an access key? This is a very important, let's say, point. We'll let's say identify those. I mean, we'll identify the differences. We'll understand what is the difference between a SAS and the access key.
Okay, thank you.
In what scenario we use HTTP and HTTPS? Normally, we go for HTTPS only. Like in any organization that you work for, in any organization you work in, you go with HTTPS only. HTTPS meaning hypertext transfer protocol secured, meaning a secure way to access your let's say data. HTTP is very rarely used. HTTP is used let's say probably inside your organization if you trust that particular network. That's where HTTP is used. But in most of the scenarios, let's say in 99% of the scenarios, you will go for HTTPS only. Now, one thing, please observe this, guys. One thing that let's say bothers me a lot is this. I put my access level back into private. And if I put my access level into private, I have to generate an SAS key to access my data. So I have to generate the SAS key, or I can use the existing SAS key to access my data. But the issue with generating an access key, or sorry, the issue with generating something called as a shared access signature is that each and every shared access signature is only valid for one blob. So if I go to the next blob, I will also have to generate a shared access signature for this blob as well, so that I can access this. So I'll have to go inside each and every blob. I'll have to, let's say, give a permission, and I have to give a key. So let's say if I have around 9 blobs here, I'll end up having 9 shared access signatures. So I'll having 9 different URLs for each and every blob out here. Let's say these are only 9 blobs. Let's say if you have 900 blobs. Let's say if you have 900,000 blobs, then how do you manage so many keys out here? It's going to be very difficult for you to, or for me as a user, to go ahead, maintain so many keys, give all those keys to the users, and also know which key belongs to which blob. It'll be very difficult for me to manage all these things. Reason being, Azure also gives you an option to go ahead and generate a shared access signature or a shared access token at a container level as well. Until now, we've been only generating shared access signatures at a blob level. But let's say you have a developer who needs access to the entire container, not just one blob, not two blobs, and etc., but all the blobs in a single container out here. You can generate something called as a shared access token at a container or on a container. Now, what difference it makes? Let's see that. I'll say shared access signature or shared access tokens. Same thing, you see the same thing what you generated on the blob level. So on the blob level, when you say generate shared access signature, you got the same page. I'll say yes, this is read, and I have a list. If I want to, let's say, add, create, and etc., you can give these permissions. So I have selected some permissions, but if you want to have minimum permissions, just a read, please select read and also list, because now you're not looking at just one blob, you're looking at a list of blobs out here, looking at all the blobs out here inside a container. So these are the minimal permissions you need. Again, start time, end time, you can decide on this and say generate shared access token and a URL. So I have a URL, and if I copy it, if I paste it in my browser, this is the error that I get. Now, someone online also said that they are trying to generate something called as a shared access token on the container. They're trying to access that particular container, and this is the error you get out here. But my question is that if you're accessing it, you want a blob, right? You want to, let's say, look at a blob. Did I anywhere specify which is the blob that I need to access? Did I say it is sample 1? Did I say it is sample 2, sample 3? No, I did not mention. In this URL, there is no room to mention this out, meaning there is no scope to mention all these things out here. Reason being, Microsoft tells you that if you want to better manage your data, don't use a browser, use a software for data management. There is a software called Storage Data Management, and this software is called Microsoft Storage Explorer. There is something called Azure Storage Explorer or Microsoft Storage Explorer. Anything is fine. Anything you can kind of talk about. This is called as an Azure Storage Explorer. This is a cloud data management software. Meaning, instead of you going ahead into the browser looking at each and every blob out here, meaning this is a simple file called JPG file out here. But let's say if you have terabytes of data, GBs of data out here, it'll become very difficult for you to, let's say, go ahead from the browser, interact with all these blobs. So Microsoft says it's a better way to manage all your content. Download this particular software. All you need to do is hit this particular download button depending upon the operating system you have. This offers, or this software can of I mean, this software, let's say, is offered for different operating systems like Windows, Mac, Linux, and etc. And whenever you go to this particular link, again, how did I go to this link? I just said Storage Explorer in Azure download. Just put this on Google. The first link you'll get is Azure Storage Explorer. Click on this one, and then you have a page which is telling that your operating system is Windows. Go ahead and download this out. I'll say hit the download button. It will take a minute for this to get downloaded. It's around a 100 MB file. and it's an exe file out here. All you do is just go to the exe file, just do a double click, take all the default options, say next, next, and install it out. You don't have to change any default settings out there. Do a double click, say next, next, and let's say install, just like you install a VLC player or just like you install any of the software. Install this out, and after you install it out, just go to your search window, say storage, and let's try this out once again. You will see something called as Microsoft Azure Storage Explorer as an application out here. You have something called Azure Storage Explorer as an application, and what I'll do is I'll open the software out. So I'll just open this out, and this software will load, and it will look something like this: Microsoft Azure Storage Explorer as such. Again, using this particular software, you don't have to log into the Azure, let's say, portal. All you need is a SaaS URL or a SaaS, let's say, key out here, and you can use that. You can use that particular shared access signature to connect with that container, or to connect with a storage account, or to connect with a blob, and so on and so forth. So what I'll do is, let's sort of, okay. What I'll do is, there is a plug icon here, right? Click on this one, and this will tell you what do you want to connect to. In my case, I generated a SaaS token or a SaaS URL for a blob container inside a storage account. There's only one blob container for which I generated something. I'll say attach to an individual blob container, and it's now telling me how do you want to attach. Do you want to sign in? Do you want to, let's say, use something called as a shared access URL? I already have a shared access URL. I'll say yes, I want to use a shared access URL. I'll say next. It's asking me what is the container shared access URL. I already generated it on the portal, right? So if I go back into the Azure portal, this is something that we just generated. I'll copy this URL, come back, I'll say paste this here. Automatically it's telling it is what? Test container one. You can also, let's say, change your display name to something like test container, and I'll just add today's date, something like 24/06/2022, just for our, let's say, understanding. I'll say next, and I'll say connect. It's saying adding a new connection here. It's telling okay, fine, I'm adding a new connection. This should become green. Now it's telling successfully added a connection. So it's telling now you are connected to a container of a storage account. And how do I check this out? Now if you see all these things out here, there are three buttons here. I'll just click on this one, and there is something called what? Test container, something like this. Test container 24/0, something like this. The reason I added today's date is because I already have a lot of containers that I connected to already, and this is a container we are interested into, called sample 1, sample 2, sample 3, and etc. And you see, you have a lot of options out here to delete, to upload, to, let's say, download, and all these things. So if I click on this, say download, I will be able to go ahead and, let's say, download that particular, let's say, it'll ask me for the location. I can save this out, and I'll be able to download all the files, and I can start working with all these files locally. I don't have to go to a browser. I don't have to, let's say, go to a browser PSS link. I can just take, let's say, a software called Storage Explorer, connect to this, connect to the Storage Explorer, connect to a container using the Storage Explorer, and then start using all this data. Now my question is that, let's say you have given access, or you have given a developer, let's say you have hundreds of developers in your organization, and there's one developer to whom you have shared this particular shared access signature, SAS. That developer downloaded, let's say, Microsoft Storage Explorer, and using that Storage Explorer, he's connected to your container, is able to see all the data inside a container. My question, as a developer, can I go and delete one blob from your container? Yes, no, maybe. Sorry, can you come again, please? Permission not given. So what will happen if I do that? If I say delete, let's see what it does. It says, do you want to really delete? I'll say yes. Fail to start the delete, insufficient credentials. The reason being, you have only given what? Read and list access on a particular container. If you do not do that, if you say, let's say, if you give all these things out here, if you give all these things, you'll again have to change the, let's say, SaaS URL. So if I change this out, if I copy this out again, and I'll have to connect once again because this URL that I connected to, or this container that I connected to, was using a SAS key with only one permission called read access out here. So what I'll do is I'll again connect. I'll say connect this. I'll say blob container. I'll say shared access signature URL. I'll again say this is 24/06/2022. All permissions. I'm just changing the name out here for my understanding. So now it added a connection with all permissions. I can now go in here. I can, for example, if sample one is something that I need to delete, I'll say delete this out. It says yes. And now you see it is starting the deletion operation. Do you see this? Because the SAS URL that you have provided has a permission to go and delete it out. And as and when I delete it out, the blob is not available here. If the blob is not available here, it won't be available inside my container as well. Do you see that sample one file anywhere? No. Now my question is, can you retrieve a deleted blob? Meaning I deleted something accidentally as a developer. Can I undelete it? Or can I restore it back? Yes, no, maybe. Show deleted blobs.
Yes, I think there is a retention policy for this.
There is a retention policy exactly. When we created a storage account, there is something yesterday that we are talking about called soft delete, 7 days. They're saying it's 7 days, meaning you can restore this blob for a period of 7 days out here. So now it's saying deleted. I clicked on this button called show deleted blobs. It's saying, okay, fine, this is deleted. And if I just scroll to the right, there is this three buttons here. Undelete. Undeleted this up. I again got it back. Again, if I just refresh it out, I'm now able to see this blob as well. So you can delete it, undelete it, provided you have a soft delete option enabled. If you do not have a soft delete option enabled, you cannot undelete it. You cannot restore all your data back again. Yes, any questions still here? Anyone, any questions still here on what did we do? So